While Pachinko strived to be as historically accurate as possible and received a lot of praise for how accurate and real the show feels, there are some little details that go unnoticed on the first glance, and you can only discover them if you seriously focus on everything that's going on in the show. Language and dialect accuracy. Due to Pachinko spanning across several generations in several countries, various languages and dialects appear in the show as families leave their homeland and travel across many countries. The three main languages used in the show are Korean, Japanese, and English, as well as many of their dialects. For the Korean language, the dialects mainly consist of Busan and Jeju, and there is also a specific dialect used by Korean Japanese immigrants that was consulted with Korean Japanese individuals. To make the spoken words as accurate as possible, several translators and dialect experts worked hard to create dialogues of people from different generations who traveled between Busan, New York, and Osaka. Hwang So-ki, who was primarily known for his work on subtitles for movies such as Deadpool, Spider-Man, and the show Game of Thrones, shared a bit about the work process in an interview. According to Hwang So-ki, the original script for the series was written all in English with the help of American writers, including Soo-hyo, the screenwriter and producer. Although Soo-hyo herself is a Korean American, she doesn't speak Korean fluently. Hwang So-ki was then asked to translate the English script into Korean and explained that there were some Korean lines in the script that were written a bit awkwardly and had to be changed. On top of that, Hwang So-ki had to convince the writers to include certain Korean slang in the script. For example, in the scene where Ko Han-soo picks up Sunja's bag, she moves away from him. The direct translation of Han-soo's line into Korean would be, "Don't worry, I won't eat you." The original line in English was, "You must know it, I mean no harm," and the Korean translation was deemed awkward. Hwang So-ki worked hard to make the Korean lines feel more natural. He explained, "In English, 'I won't eat you' is very awkward. In Korea, we know what that phrase means, and the line is more natural using that expression. When there were English sentences I couldn't find the exact Korean phrase to do justice, the writers would change the English sentence." Hwang So-ki adds that overall, it was a fun and unique experience. To improve the dialects, Hwang So-ki worked with a few theater actors to master the Busan and Jeju dialects. Their readings of the script would be recorded, and it was later referred to while completing the script. Pachinko has been highly praised for expressing the Jeju dialect properly, as it's very different from the standard language. Oftentimes, even Korean dramas would make minor mistakes in intonations, but Pachinko executed it without a mistake. Hwang So-ki shared, "We were going to soften the dialects if the actors had a hard time memorizing the lines, but the actors said they would practice, and in fact, they did a wonderful job expressing the dialect." The Japanese script for Solomon, who is a Japanese-born Korean, was checked and edited by Japanese language experts and translators to make certain words and expressions sound more natural. On top of that, historians went over and verified the finished script. Hwang So-ki said, "The original script was given different versions and were named white, gold, and pink versions every time there was a change. I can't even remember how many colors were used. The translation process continued for more than a year, and the actors must have spoken strictly according to their script." So much work had gone into the show, and Hwang So-ki expressed his deep gratitude and honor for being able to work on such an extraordinary work. The true horrors. Among other things, Pachinko has received a lot of positive feedback for the way it portrayed one specific time in history. Specifically, a lot of people appreciated Pachinko's depiction of the terrible of Koreans after the Great Kanto earthquake in Japan in 1923. An estimated 140,000 lives were lost, and more than half of the brick buildings in the region were destroyed. The show paints a picturesque scene. It shows Han-soo and his father walking together down the streets of Yokohama and the incredible and lively view of the entire scene. It's the calm before the storm because it turns into hell on earth overnight due to the massive earthquake. To explain how Han-soo became a kind person, the drama presented the horrors and tragedy Han-soo experienced because of the Great Kanto earthquake. Although Han-soo and his father were natives from Jeju Island, they lived in Yokohama and dreamt big even though they had to suffer from poor conditions. Han-soo's father later embezzled money and ended up fearing for his life, but before anything could happen, the Great Kanto earthquake took place and he ended up passing away inside a collapsed building. Thankfully, Han-soo managed to escape before he could get seriously injured. Amid the tragedy and chaos that the earthquake brought, Korean people were also targeted. Rumors had circulated around that due to the earthquake, Korean criminals were able to escape from prisons and that they were quick to steal items and even poison the water. When the town was ruled by chaos and destruction, Japanese police officers, military members, and vandals didn't hesitate to commit horrific crimes. It's estimated that over 6,000 Korean lives were taken in the process, and this event is known as the Kanto Although it portrays the horrible events of the time back then, it doesn't demonize all Japanese people. What's also interesting to note is that the earthquake wasn't a part of the novel, and Soo-hyo decided to include it into the show after she heard about the devastating number of lost lives and how everything was destroyed. She also firmly believes that this should be a part of a historical education, as she was taught neither of these things when she attended school in the United States. To describe how they made the earthquake feel so real, Soo-hyo shared, "We looked at a lot of war films. I always said that this episode should feel like a war film. We wanted this to be as visceral as possible. We wanted viewers to really be transported to that time and place." As Lee Min-ho shared, it's important to not only remember these events, but also the people who were sacrificed for the sake of others. The secret behind the title. Before Pachinko was released as a book and as a TV show, most people know Pachinko as a type of mechanical game that has its origins in Japan. It's used as a form of recreational arcade game, but much more often now, it's used as a gambling device as a form of low-stakes, low-strategy gambling. So-called Pachinko parlors are incredibly popular in Japan, and they look and operate closely to casinos. It's a multi-million-dollar industry in Japan, despite gambling being actually illegal in the country. So how does all of this tie to Pachinko, the TV series? Let's start from the beginning. As we know, the series portrays a very sensitive and heartbreaking time in Korean history. In 1910, Korea was annexed by Japan, and starting with their culture, religion, media, to their language, it became a target of Japanese invasion. Mainly, we follow the story of Sunja, who lives in Korea with her parents, and who later falls in love with Ko Han-soo, a fish broker. She becomes pregnant with his child, but learns a crushing truth. Ko Han-soo is already married. In order to protect her family from the shame they would all receive, Sunja becomes a Korean immigrant in Japan's Osaka as she hopes for a better life there. Sunja's hopes for ever returning home are crushed by World War II and the Korean War that soon follows, so she and her two sons have to continue living in Japan while being expelled by the Japanese for being Korean immigrants. When Sunja hits the rock bottom and she struggles to make ends meet, she opts for the last chance of surviving, Pachinko parlors. While she tries her best to make it through the day, she reflects on all of the struggles and troubles they have to go through trying to survive in Japan. Since Pachinko is a game of luck rather than a game of skill, what you know and what you can do hardly plays any role if you win or lose. It ties to Sunja and her family's fate closely, as their life in Japan is unpredictable, their future is uncertain, and entirely depends if luck decides to find them. Appearance of a famous idol. This fun detail will be mainly appreciated by the K-pop fans. It's such a tiny thing that is very easy to miss, but I think it's a fun detail that is definitely worth mentioning. Pachinko had its premiere on March 25th of 2022, and many viewers noticed something unusual in the montage of historical clips, including the Pachinko's cast. The sharp eyes of viewers didn't miss the surprising clip of Shiny's Taemin's hands. Although the clip is incredibly fast and lasts 4 milliseconds, the viewers were sure that they were Taemin's hands. The scene seems to be taken from Taemin's Want music video, as the clip is identical but with a different color grading. One netizen commented, "The fans are insane for catching this, good job." And another one jokingly replied to the comment saying, "We recognize the tip of his thumb from his manager's Instagram. This is nothing." Another netizen commented what many have been curious about. "I wonder if they bought the copyright or used it without permission." Taemin also trended on Twitter and other online Korean communities for this minuscule appearance in Pachinko. Since Taemin is still completing his military training, many fans are missing him and are happy even for a small thing like this. That's it for today. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. Bye!